Mikä se siis? Ladies, have you already bought lunch tickets from the restaurant? Because there is no reservation if you don't buy it beforehand. So if you haven't, please go buy it. Thanks. Okay, I think we are ready to start. Okay, dear speakers, representatives of graduate women and other women, dear friends, I appreciate a lot for this opportunity to wish you all warmly welcome in the 2019 Baltic Sea Conference here in Vantaa Geographical Science Center. I am very excited about the themes of this conference as they also combine two items very close to my heart, gender equality and nature. My name is Kersi Jokikoppo and I'm the president of Finnish Federation of Graduate Women. I first like to raise the topic gender equality in the education and working life. This item is taken from the second paragraph of our Federation official rules. The target of our Federation is to promote the working career position and equality of graduate women. In spite of the great effort made over the years, unfortunately there is still lots to do in this area. Like mentioned in the introduction of our conference, it's widely accepted that it's not possible to attain a more equal society for men and women without reducing the segregation in education and working life. Gender-based segregation in working life is still very strong in Finland, clearly more segregated than in average Europe. This division of labour market into male and female jobs and professions is very visible based on studies. Although women have started to obtain degrees in traditional male-dominated professions such as physicians or lawyers in the last few decades, the amount of equally divided professions reveals that there are no major changes in segregation. Only 10% of the professions in Finland are defined as equal, meaning women and men both represent at least 40% of total workforce. the increase of men in typical female-dominated professions is still significant. The similar segregation can also be identified in education. Almost 90% of graduated in social and healthcare sector are women, while a similar percentage of men graduate in technical or ICT sectors. In this conference, we shall hear the keynote speakers who will open us the gender equality in education and working life more widely. Addition to that, we shall also have workshops related to the topic. I wish those workshops will give all of us the possibility to share our own thoughts and that sessions will be active and full of energy. The second main topic of this conference is commitment to our common Baltic Sea. I think none of us have been able to avoid the discussions related to climate change in the last few weeks. The subject is clearly significant, but it's not the only problem we have in our hands related to nature and environment. The eutrophication of the sea is the greatest and most visible environmental problem faced by the Baltic Sea. And in fact, the impacts of climate change will accelerate also this eutrophication. This evolution is alarming, and the actions must be taken now until it's too late. Our panel discussion and the keynote speakers before that, later in the afternoon, will help us to understand what we as a women organization can do. I'm sure we shall have great discussions related to this topic. At least I'm very much looking forward to it. I want to thank already beforehand all our speakers, panel discussion members, and the workshop facilitators, as well as all other participants. I wish us very successful conference. Thank you. And now I would like to inform you some practicalities. We shall live stream this conference and it can be followed in our Federation YouTube channel. The stream can be watched also later from the channel. The link is available, for example, in the Facebook event details. If possible, you can share the link with people in your own social network. And there's a wireless network available if you need it. You can find the login details here. So it's just Heureka exclamation mark, small letters only. And in this morning session we shall have 4 speakers. Lunch will be served approximately at 11, and I already told that this ticket which I haven't bought, so obviously I don't get any food. So it must be bought beforehand. And the lunch is available in the same science restaurant where you have your morning coffee. After the lunch, we shall have 5 workshops here in auditorium. I think there will be 2 in this room, and then 3 others are in the smaller rooms upstairs, in the across the area, lobby area. And what else? Then wrap-up sessions will be held 1:30 in this auditorium, and then we shall have very important coffee break for at least for Finnish people. We are coffee heavy users. At 2:30 we shall continue with the second main topic with panel discussion, and before that there are 2 keynote speakers. And then closing remarks 4 o'clock. And then after the seminar, there is still possibility, if you are interested, this science exhibition is open until 6 p.m. And dinner is for those who have made reservation in Sokos Hotel Vantaa at 7 o'clock. But now we have some fun, I hope, first. So there will be a little game, and actually, should I So it's about related to our topics, equality or lack of it, and you can play yourself. Leia will explain how it works.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you. I hope you have internet connection in your mobile phones. Did you already find it? Because you need it when we are going to start play. You need internet connection, and then I hope you show first this.
So the address is kaho.it.
And when you are having this internet connection, so you have to go to this page, Kahoot.
Kahoot.it.
That's the page. And then when you have found this, can you follow us? Are you there? Okay. So you have internet connection, and then you have found this Kahoot pages. So we start the play.
And the code is
What's the code? Just a moment.
You will have the code, and then you can go in just a minute. And now you have the code number 40393 and 6.
and then you need to put your name.
Okay, you have the code, and then you put your name on. Okay, quite many of you are there already. Have you any questions? Okay, and now we can start.
Oh. What is the percentage of women and men who work in equal occupations in Finland in 2016? Time is running. Make your choice. Okay, I think we chose mostly this 25%. And what's the thing you need to press? Incorrect. Dust yourself off. Greatness awaits. Okay, so obviously I didn't choose the correct. So what's the reality? Is it then 9.3?
It's very bad now.
Oh. It must be my background. I thought it was more positive.
Then next.
Next. Okay, then next. In which of the following EU countries the gender pay gap was the lowest in 2016, 14.4? So UK, Finland, Lithuania, Estonia, and also Finland. Yes, I chose the correct one. Good for me. Good for Lithuania. And the next. So it's still I reading. Which of the following countries has highest share of women as board members or research funding organizations? Finland, UK, Sweden, Lithuania. Sweden. Okay. That's very, very good. Yeah. Oh, Johanna is now leaving. According to UNESCO, 29% of all researchers worldwide are female. What is the percentage in Russia? You might know. So it's 41. That's pretty nice. And we still have one question. How many Europeans think that it is not acceptable that women are paid less for the same job as men? Must be. Think but we don't act. So 90% thinks, but what's the reality? And as a kind of what's the, I don't know what is in English, but we call it aasinsilta. So link from this last question, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Anne Negre, the president of University of Europe, and she will tell us a little more about this pay equality. And you have made this claim against EU Council. So can you speak over there, because then you are visible in the stream? And you can change your, so you press here. Yeah. Yes.
It's a great pleasure to be there. The first time I've been in Finland, it was for June.
Sorry, it's not on.
I think you need to speak. Now it's working quite close.
Yes, that's it. Okay, if you go. Yes, it's working. Okay, the first time I've been in Finland, it was in Helsinki, it was for your 90th birthday. So I'm very proud to be near the 100 years birthday. You are a great association, and it's always a pleasure to be there. So the work done is on equal pay for equal job. So equal pay now, not in 50 years. The gender situation in Europe is not so good. It's better than it was, it's better than other places of the world, but it's not so well. So I let you go, and you see that 1 out of 3 women in Europe has experienced physical or sexual violence. We are around 74% of men in national parliament, so how many women? And even if it's not the same in each country, it's the reality in Europe. Equality is not real, not at all, not in any country, even in Finland, even in Sweden, even in France. It is not a reality. We are lucky to have equal right de jure, but not de facto. That is the reality. It is an extraordinary steps beside 2 years ago, but it's not a good satisfaction. So people often ignore their ignorance on this topic. And when you are discussing with judge, when you are discussing with lawyer, when you are discussing of higher level of political people, you are very surprised that they only know very few things about gender equality. They don't know a lot of things, and you must have that in your mind, that you must explain what is gender inequality. It's not to say, yes, I am fan of equality and I go through. No, it's not enough. You must really be clear about all that sort of thing, social construction, learn and international by all members of society, and so on. It is, we are educated like that, it's really deeply inside yourself. And we know now that the class ceiling is not a fatality. And all the research show that when there are more women involved in responsibility, there are more equality. Why? Why? It's not because we are clever, more clever, I know why. It's because we ask, because we don't know everything, and we ask, we ask a lot of things, if bored. And when you ask, you change, because you must give a good answer when you are the people who answer. And that makes all the difference. So glad to see inequality, and if necessary, and together all is possible. So I am very glad to be your representative at the Council of Europe. You will support my candidacy to be, first of all, expert gender, then, because the bylaw changed, a vice president in charge of equality of one of the pillars of the Council of Europe. It's why I'm talking about the Council of Europe. And it had been created in May 49, a common judicial area based on more than 200 treaties, and you often listen about the European Court of Justice. It's based on Human Rights Convention, and for our topic, it's the European Social Charter with monitoring of the member state by the European Committee of Social Rights. And it's inside that we have the possibility of collective complaint. So the 4 pillars of the Council of Europe: Committee of Ministry, Parliamentary Assembly, Congress of Local and Regional Authority, and the Conference of NGO, the only conference of NGO that is accredited institution in the world. The first, the only one. And I am Vice President in charge of equality. So I'll let you read the standard. It's the most important standard of the world. And when a resolution is voted by the Parliamentary Assembly, a resolution is adopted by the Committee of the Legislature, it's going in the country, and the country must adopt. So, Swiss objective for the last gender equality strategy, paving the way, launched in Copenhagen. I'll let you read it, and you see that ensure the equal access of women to justice, achieve balanced participation of women and men, and clearly we are in the objective when we fight for equal pay. So, change the manner of authority, and we must go, and we must obtain equal pay for equal job between women and men, and women in position making. But how? That's always a question, how? So, because my function, I am member of quite a number of things, like the Gender Equality Commission of the state. So I'm allowed to talk, but I'm allowed to listen. And to listen some brilliant people coming. And one was the General Secretary Executive of the Social Charter, and he explained us, never a collective complaint that is allowed for since 1995, back, and never on the topic of equal pay. So it was quite interesting to see if I was allowed, able to do it. So the social charter is a monitoring place, and a place since 1995 you are allowed to launch collective complaints. The collective complaints are who can launch collective complaints. First of all, it's trade unions and the NGO, internal or the specialists. So it's in 15 that I decide and try to decide to go through. And you see here, I propose the action before I went to Amsterdam to see the archive, to make a work of what is possible and to explain what it was, what we are, if we are able to go through, if we have the means to go through. So, Edith Lanassi was president of UE. She immediately accepted the board. It was the first time we make some sort of action, so it was not even an evidence because it's a quasi-jurisdiction. Let's accept. Yes, immediately. And after I tried to have some help. Because it's not easy. Because I proposed to do not one action, like in France, but it was for the first time of the social charter, 15 actions. 15 actions, why? Because there are 50 state members who accept collective complaint. So I proposed 15. So I have to make some research in 15 countries. And I asked some help, and I had not a lot of help. So I was quite at to say, no, I cannot do it. But I've taken engagement in front of Europe, so I go through. But it was an incredible work. Quite like not my PhD, but quite a little. It was quite 6 months full job. So, the research, I let you to see the countries, and I launched collective complaint, agree of no respect of equal pay for equal job, but because I fight for the women board, women executive committee firm, I put that like that, and they decided it was a given. Great. And then, what's going on? All the states, except 3, were completely mad, and they said, we have no merits to go through. And what they were put inside the contestation was incredible. Greece, we are going to put it off all the social charter. Netherlands, and when I read the thing, there were 3 by 3 quite the same. And Netherlands said, we were together. So the states were together against us, a small organization. It was incredible. So for the first, so I was quite anxious. Are we the merits or not? It was a real discussion. And we have the merits on July 15. Then, after, it was very curious to receive the replies of the country. And for myself, I was quite sure one country is going to say, yes, there's no equality, we are doing the best. None one said, none one. And now, it's incredible to see how they were not honest, like Czech Republic. I was there, I met the defense of human rights and the defense of the ombudsman. And she gave it to me, the ombudswoman, and she gave it to me the report, the official report. And the official report was not in the reply and the protection of peace of the country. So I put it myself. So the states are exactly, because my job is to be alternate law, the states are exactly the same as another defender like that against you when you are not, it's always exactly the same. No more honor, no more dignity, fight. But it's fight of the half citizen of Europe for equal pay. So, I'm not going to explain exactly because you are going back to segregation. So I'm going first on that point. So the first law, the first version, equal pay for equal job, similar component. For the moment, all the past decision of the Committee of Social Rights is for an obligation of reserve. And now, all the states are making some effort, but none are the result. So what is they are going to do? If we are like that, we win. But I'm very worried that we are not doing that, because there are some incredible pressure of states against us. It's incredible. Pressure not against us, but against our position, and to make some pressure on the social charter committee. So we are quite worried. For you, it is an evidence. For me, it is an evidence. But maybe we are going to win, not to win. That is incredible. So the great segregation, we are going to be talk about that. An economic loss for all, because we know that is the question, and what I put in my 15 complaint. Now the action plan of the European Union is going exactly in the same way than us, and I believe it. And the second version, you know everything on it. And I put, and at the beginning of the fact, when I exposed the fact of the collective complaint, I asked, I'm doing like a lawyer, like that, very soft and so on, or like a feminist, and they said, like a feminist. But they were not, they were very surprised. Because when I saw, I see the life of Europa, a young European girl. And Europa was very pleased to be first, because there is some selective abortion in Europe, Azerbaijan, Albania, and so on. And so on, every step of the life, and they were completely ill. So, what are our support? In the collective complaint, we have the European Trade Union Confederation, 45 million of salary, they come and support us it's not bizarre, in the process. And you see what they say. I came and see the Commissioner of Human Rights. It was at the end of his mandate. It was in December. He was living on March. He didn't want to go and come in the procedure. He never been there. He came in procedure in the European Court, Human Rights Court, but he refused there. So I said, you cannot. You are not a specialist of gender. You are not really. So it could be very interesting for you to finish with something very high level for gender. And 1 hour after, we all the cabinet with him, and the cabinet was with me, with us, and accept. And so he made a statement, and the statement is very good for us. Equinet is the network of all the ombudsmen, but national ombudsman. One country have an ombudsman, and it is the official ombudsman of human rights. So it's the first time they came in a post for collective complaint, and they support the collective complaint. So it's incredible to have that support. And for the second time of its history, the first time European Commission came to support, or to be in a collective complaint for Greece, or against Greece, and so only one, and they come for 14 to support us. So it is incredible to have the support of the European Union by its Commission. It's incredible. And look what they say. So after that, I said, the work was not for nothing. And now, we still not have date for the result. 2 weeks ago, there were a very important meeting on the social charter at the presidency of committee of the ministry with France. I discussed a few seconds with the president of the committee. I discussed with other people, and I was I was very anxious because they said very controversial. Yes, yes, we love equality, it's a necessity, but you know the state and so on. And I really hear that maybe we are going to win. I hope that, but no. The real song that was very bad. And I was completely, for the last 15 days like that. All that work for nothing. But who are we if we lost? Who are we? So I have that idea before our AGM in Geneva. So I proposed to University Women of Europe the other thing, to make 28 action to the European Commission to put the different countries on exactly the same place. What are you doing on the equal pay? But in front of the European Union. I started to work about unanimously, and for Finland who are voting too. But it's very difficult. It's a huge work again, 28. And I immediately say to the collective complaint secretariat that it can be with European Union. Because if we are not winner there, and we are winner at European Union, what is going on? So I'm going to put the mess. But I need help because it's an incredible job. Again, it's free job, huh? And it's not easy. But they are a bit anxious of that. Because now, what are the consequences if we win? You know. But the consequence if we know, it's that is a process. The state informs the committee, and after it's only a question of what is going on with the state. If the state is willingness, all is going fine, is going to do the best. But if the state is saying, oh, I'm doing so many efforts, but it's enough now, and so on, you know, it's diplomatic. You know? And they refuse, they can take a recommendation, they can take other, and after they are looking and looking at, every time they look into, they are monitoring the state, they are looking what's going on. But they know, and it's only after political question any country. So when, if I do the same in front of the European Union, it's not contained. But if we are, by instance, one, we lose, the other, we win. It really seems that, first of all, the committee, European Committee of Social Rights, have no more credibility if we lose. No more credibility. What that committee is going to say that there is not equal, there is the equal pay is not a reality, unequal pay is not a reality in Europe. We know, you know, and you see. So you work for women, and give it to me in the last travel in Europe, in Finland. So, if we lose, it is the loss of the committee, because it is any credibility. And all the social charter, that is really incredible because it's given the social constitution of the European salary, is losing all credibility too. So that is an incredible task. What is going on if we lose? If we lose, okay, we lose. It's university woman, it's nothing. The consequences are incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. This is very important topic. I think there's one time for one question if somebody has, and then of course you can discuss with Anne on the last lunch break. But if anybody wants to ask any questions or one question. Okay, if not, then we oh, there's one. She was the first one.
Hi, my name is Anna. I just have a small question. Why did you mention surrogacy as something bad? Why it was in the presentation?
Can you repeat?
Surely. Why did you mention surrogacy as something bad? It was in the presentation. Surrogacy. Surrogate mothers. It was in the presentation. You mentioned surrogate mothers. Why do you think it's bad?
What is that? What is that?
It was in the presentation at the beginning. It was in the presentation that you want to stop bad things, like unequal pay. It was one of the first slides.
So mother, someone else is giving the birth
Yes.
on behalf of somebody. So what's the, I don't know the names.
Why is it bad?
Why is that? It was mentioned here at the beginning, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So it's quite clear that like trafficking is bad.
Yeah.
But why is pornography?
Surrogacy.
But why surrogacy?
Surrogacy, yes.
Oh, it's a question, surrogacy, it's not everywhere in the world, it's not a good thing for women.
But why do you think it's bad? What about
Because I
choice?
think that the body of a woman is never an action of money, never. And surrogacy is an action of money.
What about free?
But it's not a question, it's only an example. I'm sorry that you don't agree, but it's my position and I put it because I don't like any action of money for a body. For a man body, for a woman body, it's my position. It could be another position, but it's not a question of surrogacy here, it's a question of faith.
Okay, I see. For me, you can do whatever you want with your body.
Yes. I'm free to say what I want, and I say suddenly the question for individual I understand, but politically, when I see some film of women in firm in India, in Russia, in Romania.
Yeah, okay.
Ask you another question?
No. Yeah, but we need to go, so you need to discuss them later, the next break, yes. Thank you, Anna. Okay, and now we continue. We are honored to have our first keynote speaker, Professor Carol Mundell from UK Embassy, and she is the Chief Scientific Advisor at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Please welcome Professor Mundell.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'd like to start by thanking the Finnish Federation of Graduate Women for inviting me to speak at this event today. I'm delighted to be able to join you. I'm a physicist by background, so it's unusual for me to be in a room full of women. An incredibly refreshing, very nice way to spend a Saturday morning. I am here in my capacity as Chief Scientific Advisor at the UK's Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And it's been a privilege, while I've been in Finland these last 2 days, to meet with colleagues in the learned societies of Finland, the Academy of Finland, rectors and chancellors of universities, and colleagues at the Ministry of Education. It was a very busy day for me yesterday. And I finished off with a public lecture at the Thinking Corner, which was a fantastic space. And I was struck by the extent and the depth of cooperation between the UK and Finland in the field of science and innovation. And to give one figure to demonstrate this, Finnish and UK scientists published almost 14,000 co-authored scientific articles in the last decade together. So our friendship is deep and long-lasting. And the message I came to deliver is really, and that I've heard in return, is that we want this cooperation to continue and to grow. And our ambition really is to continue to maintain and strengthen our close ties with Finland and all of our European friends and partners. And in fact, Brexit will not change that. Close UK cooperation with our valued science and innovation partners shouldn't be jeopardised by wider circumstances. And I think for me that is particularly important on the diversity agenda. And it's remarkable to hear Anne's immense piece of work, and I really wish you luck and hope that the work that you've done comes out positively. The desire to collaborate also applies to the key topic that we're here to discuss today, and this is the issue of gender inequality. Both Finland and the UK have made progress on gender equality issues, and together we are actually leaders on these matters, but we should not be satisfied with it. And in fact, I know all of you in this room today and those online are not. We need to go further with the progress, and we need to go further now. There is no time to wait. Women and girls continue to be underrepresented in all levels of decision-making globally, as well as in the UK and in Finland. Women and girls must have the chance to participate in political life, decision-making in issues that concern their lives. Ensuring control over their lives and their own bodies is fundamental to giving women and girls the ability to complete their education, fulfil their personal, political and economic potential. And it's also important that we work with men and boys to have them engaged in the gender equality issues and to see the benefits that gender equality brings. We have great potential to do this with our younger generation. I have two sons who are very progressive in their views, and I know the young women and the young men who are asking the older generation to do better on climate change have the real potential to change the way we think about inequality. The effects of gender inequality are holding the world back and preventing the development of secure, stable and prosperous societies. We're missing 50% of our talent in many of the areas that matter. 130 million girls globally do not have access to education. In conflict zones, girls are 2.5 times more likely to be out of school than boys. On current trends, it will take 170 years to close the global gender pay gap. That's a long time. If women have the same role in labour markets as men do, up to an estimated $26 trillion could be added to global GDP. In the field of science and technology, engineering, mathematics and the arts, many fewer girls than boys in the STEM subjects and the digital subjects, and fewer women than men enter and remain in STEM careers. In the UK, only 26% of core STEM graduates are women. In Finland, the figure is 22%, and we indeed have a moral and economic imperative to reduce that gap. Crucially, science and innovation have an essential role to play in finding solutions to many common challenges we face in the world today. As I've said, climate change, biodiversity loss, antimicrobial resistance, ageing societies. This affects us all irrespective of gender and background and geographical location. It's in all of our interest to ensure that we harness the potential that we have to take advantage of the opportunities and the challenges that lie ahead. Diversity, inclusion and the promotion of STEM education and professions are among the top priorities in the UK government's policy. According to estimates, by 2025, we will need nationally 700,000 STEM technicians and 1.8 million new engineers to meet the market and employer demand in the UK. We do not yet have that supply line, and that supply line does not have gender equality in it. In the UK's industrial strategy, we have committed to boosting UK productivity and earning power. We believe that in order to do so, it is vital that we address the shortage of STEM and digital skills. Since 2018, we've invested £406 million additionally in maths, digital and technical education, as well as £1.3 billion in research and innovation talent. And that really is just the start. Earlier this year, the UK government published its strategy, Gender Equality at All Stages, a Roadmap for Change. The roadmap commits to address persistent gender barriers at different stages of life. So it's a real living document to ensure that we're held to account. And to ensure that we address the gender gap as well as the skills gap, we've developed programs focusing specifically on championing women and girls in STEM. One such example is the Stimulating Physics Network, which encourages more girls to study physics between the ages 16 and 18. This programme seeks to address the wider decision-making factors that influence a young woman's choice to pursue physics, such as developing physics teachers' awareness of inclusive teaching techniques, and whole school projects to raise awareness amongst teaching staff of gender stereotyping, unconscious bias, sexist language, and developing options and real on-the-ground actions to address them. The UK also utilises STEM ambassadors to broaden the image of careers in scientific and technological fields. The WISE campaign, the Women in Science and Engineering, for instance, has established a new network of eminent diverse women working in science, technology and engineering to promote gender balance at the highest levels and to achieve the campaign's vision of equality in STEM from the classroom to the boardroom. Research funding is also linked now to equality in certain fields. Established in 2005, the Athena Swan Charter promotes gender equality and supports the role of women in STEM, higher education, and as you've heard, there'll be a workshop this afternoon on that topic. Athena Swan has been adopted by over 160 universities and research institutes in the UK, Ireland and Australia now. The UK's largest provider of clinical research, the National Institute for Health Research, requires funded projects to demonstrate equality through the Athena Swan Charter. So equality is linked to money. It is great to see Gary Locke being able to attend today. We'll be running the workshop this afternoon. And these initiatives also need to be accompanied by legislation. Bottom-up has to be countered with top-down. The UK in 2017 brought in new legislation called the Gender Pay Gap Reporting Legislation. And we heard from Anne about the Equal Pay for Equal Work legislation that's required. In the UK, that law, the Equal Pay for Equal Work, was enshrined in law in 1963. It was updated in 1970, and it's now encompassed in the Equality Act 2010. So the gender pay gap is a different form of legislation. This goes beyond equal pay for equal work, which is enshrined in law. And the new legislation requires organisations that have 250 or more employees to report annually on their gender pay gap. Those data are really the crux of making the argument, the evidence-based argument, back to companies, both by their employees to their companies and externally, to actually confront these biases that are inherent and structured within those organisations and through our society. And companies are also encouraged to publish an action plan to show how they intend to address that gap. And that's been a very influential piece of legislation. We must also look at equality more broadly in gender. This includes ensuring equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender members of our societies. The UK is proud to be a founding member of the Equal Rights Coalition to advance the human rights of LGBTI persons and promote inclusive development. The UK hopes to use its tenure as co-chair of the coalition to deliver a new strategy and host an international LGBT rights conference in 2020 to energise the work of the coalition and address the key issues facing our people globally, including violence and discrimination and ongoing criminalisation of same-sex conduct in 69 different countries. And the reason that I'm sharing these ideas with you is not because the UK has the answers to them or has solved the problems of gender inequality and other inequalities, far from it. But it's absolutely vital that we continue to have the conversation, that we keep the agenda on the table in all of our countries and internationally. And indeed, we're still conducting analysis into which initiatives are most successful. There are many initiatives going on across the country, and it's imperative that we measure the impact of them, figure out what works so that we can actually amplify and scale the successful schemes up. And I hope today that some of the examples that I've mentioned briefly will be of interest, and I hope to learn more about the Finnish approach during today's discussions. And I really strongly believe that it's only through working in partnership with friends and colleagues in other countries that we can really improve our individual efforts. Isolation is not the way to drive towards equality. Looking internationally, I believe there is much to learn from Finland's work to improve the rights of girls and women abroad. And the UK is proud to be following Finland's example of putting women and girls' rights at the centre of international foreign policy. The UK launched its Leave No Girl Behind campaign at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 2018, calling for 12 years of quality education for girls internationally. But there is much more that we need to do. 2020 will be a landmark year on the global stage as we celebrate 25 years of the Beijing Platform for Action and the 20th anniversary of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. And I hope that these opportunities really will be seized. There has been progress, but it can very quickly be eroded, and we see this happening over the world today. On a personal note, I'd like to just mention briefly the sorts of progress that I've seen within one generation. When my mother was a young woman and she was working, she was in the public sector in the UK, and she had to resign when she got married. Now, she was a young working married woman, and she needed to work, and so she moved into the private sector. And in the private sector, it was more progressive. She could work there until she was expecting her first child. And when she was, I think many of those companies, when you were 6 months pregnant, you either resigned or you were sacked. And within one generation, her daughter has become the first person in my family to go to university, obtain my degree, my PhD. I've become a professor in a male-dominated field, and I now have the privilege of being on secondment in the Foreign Commonwealth Office, representing my country internationally. So change is possible, and it takes courage, and it takes connections, and it takes real insight, both men, women, and across all of our societies. And understanding the challenges that we each encounter that are common in our countries, that are different in our countries, reaching out to women of all ethnic backgrounds in all sorts of different areas in the world, whether in conflict or whether in peace. And the other statistic that struck me, in the Foreign Office in 1976, the same rule applied. If you got married, you had to resign. Today, 35% of our international ambassadors are women. And the rule of thumb is when there are 30% or more of a particular characteristic, you no longer feel like a minority, and then you can start to make real progress. So in conclusion, it's fantastic to be celebrating the many successful women here today, who set an example and serve as role models for the next generation of women exploring their own potential. I can't overstate the importance of role models, both what we learn from younger women who challenge us to make faster progress, and the experience that we've gathered over our lifetimes that we can share and use to move the dial for those younger women. In the UK, Finland and beyond, we face challenges in tackling social norms, traditions and gender stereotypes that are clearly harmful. Through cooperation, supported by sharing the best practices, and as we heard from Anne, by actually gathering the data, doing the research and presenting that evidence to change attitudes and also to change laws. They are the key points that we need to make progress. And then we need to use our international fora to amplify our developments globally and at home. And I think today we have an opportunity to share our ideas and experiences about how we can create that change together. And when you're having your conversations over coffee about gender equality and the changes that we want to see, I'd also encourage you to ask one another, if you don't know one another, what do you work on? Network on what gets you up in the morning, what excites you, what is your field of expertise, and network on that as well, because all of those help us to connect and move the dial to equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Now, time for questions. So, somebody wants to ask something. Christina, will take the microphone. Good morning. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm Lena Malaunik. I'm from Turku to be here with you. And I'm a mother of 2 daughters and 2 sons. So what is your advice to raise the sons?
Raising the same way you raise your daughters. I think you have an amazing ecosystem within your family. You have a social experiment there live. I think for me, what I've noticed over my career, and I struggle in some ways with the gender lens. You know, I'm a woman physicist, but first and foremost, I'm a physicist, I'm an astrophysicist. And as I've gone through my career, early on people asked me, oh, do you experience sexism? And I said, no. And then as I've gone through my career, I've gone, yes, oh my goodness me, here's all the structural biases and here I see it repeating. And what I've noticed in talking to my junior male colleagues, my sons, we also have to bring the men along, or we get a backlash. And the polarization that I see, where women are asking and now demanding equality and driving change, the young men are actually being told, you need to be more macho, you can't go into the caring professions. We have the same gender bias. You see 90% of women in biology or the caring professions now, increasingly in medicine. You know, we also have to help our men to be who they want to be and to give them the full spectrum of options. So for me, it's about the wider diversity landscape. Who are you? Who do you want to be? What are the opportunities that you need? And the structural biases that need to be removed for you to fulfill your potential. So it's not about having men all be the same and then the women come and remove them. The women shouldn't have to be like the men to be in those roles. We need to come with a whole range of different diverse lived experiences, and evidence shows that the more diverse your team is, the more challenging the thinking is, the more successful you are, whether that's in a social context, whether that's in a business context. We have such immense global challenges that we don't yet know the solutions for. We need that diverse thinking. So help your children to have the confidence to challenge the status quo, whatever that status quo is, and learn from one another. And if they each have different experiences as they're going through life, have them talk to one another about it and figure out together how to challenge it.
I would like to ask you, or maybe I misunderstood you, but you mentioned from the start that Brexit will change the ambition of the scientific cooperation. And I have been traveling in UK, meeting different researchers within my field, which is in family sociology and social sciences in general. And there I have met many worries about what is going to happen to scientific cooperation internationally when the Brexit. So I was a little bit astonished about what you said.
Thank you for that question. It's a very important question, and this is work that I've been in the Foreign Office now for 1 year, and this has been a major component of the work that I've been doing internationally. So structurally, first of all, for the Horizon 20 programme, we have ministerial underwrite to continue that, whatever kind of exit that we have on the 31st of October. And I think that that's an incredibly important message so that it's understood internationally that the UK remains a stable and trusted research partner. I really understand and recognise the stress and the strain that is being felt in our research community. 2 days a week I am an academic. I was head of my physics department before I joined the Foreign Office. So I've seen and felt that strain viscerally at the coalface. And the work that we've been doing in Whitehall for the planner has been very much bringing the evidence to ministers. They've taken that evidence on board, and we're making sure that the right processes are in place to ensure that we have stability of that research environment. We would like the opportunity to associate with Horizon Europe, and part of that work is making sure that friends like Finland, who we have shared values with and we have very good research links, are able to raise the case within the Commission, we're no longer in the room, because our international friendships across the whole of Europe will not end with Brexit. So we're leaving the European Union, we're not leaving Europe. And for me, I've always worked internationally, my collaborators are around the world. Again, the research imperatives go beyond any particular political climate in any country for me. And it's the people-to-people connections and those links that are absolutely vital. So we have, a very strong message from our current Prime Minister and our previous Prime Minister about how important the government sees scientific research and innovation, science in the broadest sense, and there is real money going into those programs in a very vigorous way. And I think taking that message, that the stability for our research community is there, and it's there intentionally, is a message that I would also ask all of you to give back into our UK friends, because I've also seen that caution, that uncertainty, absorbing the current media messages is changing behaviour. So if your collaborators turn away from you and stop collaborating with you, it's not because they're looking inwards or to other countries, it's because they're not actually hearing the strength of the message that we want them to hear. So you can also play a part in saying to you, keep calm and carry on, keep doing what you do, because it's much more important than whatever happens politically in each country as time goes on.
Thank you. And is there anybody else wanting? Okay, one question. Last one.
Thank you. I'm Terry Boudra from the Netherlands, and we recently had our association also about STEM. And the person who she had a subsidy from the government and was able to do research on it, and he's discovered that you could also already start in kindergarten already with the joint, not only girls playing dolls, but also with trains and cars or whatever. And it's got to go right through the education. Otherwise, you lose them about 14, then they're gone. Is that the same experience in the UK?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. There are a couple of points. There's a campaign called Let Toys Be Toys, and there is actually a Twitter at Let Toys Be Toys, you can see it. It's been a great campaign actually, just for calling out manufacturers and toy shops and saying, well, why do you have all the pink toys here and all the blue toys here? Also studies on how we have evolved over the last few decades, away from in the 70s, maybe in the 60s and 70s, where toys were becoming more equal. There's a very interesting YouTube presentation that I saw, and unfortunately I can't remember the lady's name, but I can probably find it and share a link. And she just does an analysis of Lego toys, and the photograph on the front of the box. In the 60s and 70s, it was about families creating something together. And it gradually moved through. Her hypothesis was that around about the 80s, toys became quite gendered. And Lego toys that were creative, so space engineering, weaponry, the stuff that boys were traditionally picking up or being messaged to, the girls were being messaged to on consuming, so going to the hair salon, going to the dog salon, and there was quite controversy about how even the little figures were created. The ones that the boys were playing with, allegedly, the heads could be taken off, they could be restructured, the girls were getting them as given. My son's like all of that, and again, it's about we should be able to play with all of those toys. So that campaign's very interesting, and consumers can call out manufacturers and say, why did you have the girls' cookbook and the boys' cookbook? Why can't we just have a cookbook? But I think the research evidence, and there's a very interesting study that showed that girls and boys, as young as 6, already have the belief that boys are naturally clever and girls have to work hard. Now, that's 6, that's very, very young, and boys and girls are equally biased in that. If you then add on some of the stereotypes that we have in society that subjects like physics and engineering are hard subjects, then already you've embedded a bias where, whether that's the children themselves, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the parents, there's an impression there that it's going to be tougher for girls to go through physics, they're going to have to work hard. They'll have to be disproportionately committed to choose those subjects, whereas the boys, the Einstein stereotype will sail through the natural geniuses. Or if the boys have got through that system, they are by definition natural geniuses. Again, it puts terrible pressure on the boys and it disadvantages the girls. So instead of saying, do a subject because you love it and we'll find a way to support you through that. So I think those sorts of studies are incredibly important because we then get to figure out not necessarily what the cause of that is, we still maybe don't know why the 6-year-olds have got that attitude, but we can then start to design strategies that might be effective rather than trying to tackle it at 14, which, as you say, is already too late. There's another study that says the attitudes between 7 and 13 are mostly fixed, so you can make some change up to 7 and you can then have an impact maybe at 12. But again, where that particular age is maybe depends on the system. Obviously in the UK we have mixed gendered schools, but we also have single sex schools. So certainly in my department I've spoken to young women who've come to study physics, and some of them have come from single sex schools where they didn't know they couldn't do physics. But then they arrive in the university department where there are only 20% women undergraduates and even fewer academic staff, and they say, where have all the women gone? The boys who come from single sex schools go, oh gosh, there's some women here. And the mixed gender schools, well, there's a range. And so starting to open up new fields that don't have those gendered stereotype images can also be quite revolutionary, which I think is where some of the digital tech, if we harness that correctly, we can open up those fields. But again, if it sits with your stereotypical bro culture Californian tech developer writing AI, we embed those inequalities in our advanced technological systems, which will then further embed in a very, very insidious way the inequalities that we're living at the moment. So it all has to be fixed.
Thank you. Okay, that was UK point of view, and now we turn to Baltic and Icelandic view and experience. Our next speaker is Associate Professor, also Sociology, Primer, also from Tallinn University. Please welcome Associate Professor Krause.
Hello. I'm so glad and humbled to be here and stand in front of you. I've prepared my slides and they have to be put up yet. I thought I won't prepare my slides because there's so much I want to tell you. But then obviously with slides I get to be more focused. So I have been working as a sociologist, and I've been working on the topics of gender inequalities in labor market and in education. And I kind of stumble on this question all the time, that we don't know what is behind the gender wage gap. So people like to say it, but we really don't know what's behind the gender wage gap. So obviously it's good for sociologists because we can keep studying it, because our research gets funded, because let's see what this unexplained part of gender wage gap really consists of. Maybe there are specific things that we have overlooked before. So I kind of like it personally, but I think it's really weird that we seem to need more and more. Just a second. Sorry for this. It seems that solutions that we can start with need to. I mean, we can create solutions if we know what the causes are, right? So it seems to be okay. Let's keep on studying. Then we find out what's really wrong, and then we can start fixing it. Which of course requires more studying, because how do we know how to fix it? So it's really good excuses not doing anything. Right? So the question of let's do something is really dependent on, well, we really don't know what to do. But there are people who do something. So the gender equality officer in Estonia decided to create a TV series that is targeting all those issues that are wrong in gender equality. And of course, when a gender equality officer comes up with that idea, there's usually they don't have funding for that. So they cooperated with Lithuanian and Icelandic gender equality officers, and they created a project proposal for European Commission, something, some tool, and they were supported in that. So we now have finished a couple of years of this project, where the aim was to make the enable people, empower people to make choices in their careers and in educations where they would be free of gender stereotypes. So just to do what you said, do what you like, but recognize what you like, and then keep doing what you like. So I think this was a really good idea. Now, sociologists came along to this project not only to measure what the impact of such an intervention could be, because you can imagine it's difficult to measure such an impact, and I will discuss it in the workshop that we will have later on this specific project and how it's created. But if you create a TV series, it can't be about, okay, this is a good example, this is a bad example. It has to engage people. And if it has to engage young people too, it has to be like in specific context it appears, and it has to have characters, and they have to kind of make sense. Obviously, it was not the gender equality officer who was writing the narrative, but there was a competition, and the screen scenarios were written and proposed, and then we chose between them. It was really, really a good process, and in the end of the couple of years, this TV series was chosen as the script of the TV series was chosen as the best of the TV series in Estonia that year. So it was a really good person who was working on it. Nevertheless, if we want to do something which is shown in Estonia and in Lithuania and in Iceland, and possibly also elsewhere, it has to kind of acknowledge where are the differences. So we know the problem is the same. And all of us can say the problem is sort of the same. But then there must be some differences. There are differences. We looked at the Kahoot in the beginning of the day. So Lithuania now happens to have the smallest wage gap. How does that come about? Iceland seems to have the best gender equality, whatever things. Estonia seems to have the largest gender wage gap in all those countries. And the differences are quite large. It's not like, it's like double. So with the Lithuanian numbers. Where are the differences? Now, when you think about it, where would you look for differences? And let me ask a question. We are here in the company of academic women. Now, when you think about a university woman or an academic woman, how do you picture that person? Try to picture them. Just think about what is the context where you picture them in. And I don't want to know, but so this is a painting in 1939, and from 1939 by a woman, by an Estonian artist who was then 35 years old. So, of course, these are not academic women, but these are women. They are not doing housework. So they're doing something else. They're not just being pretty. They're doing something. They're really engaging with the world. This is the same author picturing just a portrait of a woman with a book. So we have a project-based learning thing in our university now, where a group of students is looking at the reading, how women reading is presented, right? So if someone is reading a book, is that something that distinguishes them, like they're already something different? So there's a reader in that time, 47, by the same author. Someone pictured in 78. She's reading. It's about looking back and thinking. There's another more contemporary from 80s already, so again, a woman that's reading. But my question is, how do we think of people? Like, they are really they're really doing all those other things too. So if you're an academic woman or a university woman, you're not just doing your academic or university stuff. And we discussed it before. We also have to work at home hard to break gender stereotypes and change the world. So we're doing all this time, all this very aware stuff. So obviously we discussed it before, like my personal, whatever I do, my behaviors, my understandings, if I feel empowered to go for my, what I believe or what I want, it's not just me. It comes from my immediate environment, which is then this meso-level collective meaning-making process. So the things that are made available to me, the norms, the beliefs that are made available to me from the wider context, right, on the macro level. So not obviously a TV series can change very many things, but also it can not change very many things. Break was the name of this project. It's just on the project website that is available in Estonian, in Russian, in Lithuanian, in English. So a number of languages. The TV series is actually available there. You can click on it and on the educational context. It has been, there are subtitles in all those languages that I mentioned, Lithuanian, Russian, Icelandic and English. The Russian is also a voiceover thing, so there are also instructions of how one can use it. But the question for us really was, how are these countries different? So they have a really different type of welfare regime, which means the support that is available or the support that is needed is different across those countries. The gender equality indexes in general, so Iceland obviously has the best ever, but now luckily, as we heard, the gender wage gap is lowest in Lithuania, so not only bad in Estonia. The number of NEET youth, people who really are in, they don't feel they are in position, they don't feel they are empowered to make those choices in relation to their education and labor market careers. Their amount is very different across those countries, so of course very low in Iceland. The amount of cultural minorities in those countries, so the groups you have to reach, the different groups you have to reach when you want to empower anyone and give them choices, which really is not very empowering. It's different across those countries still. The situation with the religion, so the cultural situation is quite different. The question then about gender ideologies. Now, do you think the gender attitudes across those three countries, do you think they are more different than similar, or more similar than different? So we are here because it is the association which crosses those countries and others. Like, when you think about them, just think about them on your own. But just, do you think they are different? Because there seems to be, since Iceland is not in the European Union, they are not covered in all the kinds of reports, but they are covered in many reports, so you may have some idea. Now, of course, who would even care if Estonian and Lithuanian, the number, and Icelandic, the numbers are so small, right? It seems that you just tell everyone who you know and then it's already different. But it doesn't really seem to be the case. So we use the research approach that is quantitative, because that's the way to gather the most data. And we're using the data that was prepared by the consortium, the International Social Service Program Consortium. In 2012, they ran across the world the gender roles study. Since it is not funded centrally, and everyone who is interested in running it has to find their funds themselves, these studies were run in Estonia and in Lithuania and in Iceland in a little different years, but they're all kind of very comparable. So I'm coming up with some small examples from this study, because we assume that everyone lives in some context. So we asked about gender attitudes. So what are the perceived problems with working women? So the question is, do you see women work as a problem? Because obviously it's bad for kids. Obviously it's bad for kids if women work, right? Your mother's example was probably really good in that sense. We shouldn't keep women at labour market when kids need to be taken care of. So we see that all these countries are quite similar in the extent that they do believe that being a housewife is as fulfilling as working for pay to the same extent, which is not that much, but they are not different. So across those three countries, support for gender division of work is higher than support to both spouses' equal contribution to the family budget. So across all those three countries, some of them are really good at equality indexes, some of them are not very good at equality indexes. We actually support gender division more than equal contribution. So supporting choice in work and marriage. This thing, we can empower people, but then we don't accept their choices that they make as a society. Both the support to choice to marry, like, is it as well as for the kids if you don't marry your spouse or your partner? It's strong in Iceland. So in Iceland, you have all the choice. I mean, you can do whatever you want, and we accept it as society. But in Estonia, it's a little less supportive, and in Lithuania, we kind of don't support all your choices. We only support all your right choices. And it seems that those under 30 years are somewhat more likely to support freedom, to marry or not. But the age differences disappear when we consider support towards homemaking. So marrying is one thing, but we still think women have to work harder at home, and that's just it. So what about lived realities? Now thinking about where these women really are, and men too, and subjective satisfaction with it. Like, think about if the partnerships where everyone contributes equally, do they feel more happy than others? The underlying question here, obviously, because we could show that, if we could tell that people who contribute equally are more happy, then it really doesn't mean anything, because just maybe more happy people decide to contribute equally. So, family budget. We don't normally think of family budget, but talking about gender pay gap, isn't that one of the things that we should talk about? So countries differ quite substantially here, to the extent the family budget is a joint economic enterprise. So those who live with a partner, of course, we would ask them this question only from these people who have an adult in their household that could contribute. They report that the man's income is higher than the woman's, more likely in Iceland, where 2/3 of the cases, so the most gender equal country in the world, 2/3 of households obviously say that man's income is higher. In Estonia, it's about half, or a little more than half, and in Lithuania, about half of respondents. So, through those less equal countries. Then in Iceland, about 80% of families pool all or some of their incomes and use them jointly, and only 15% keep separately. So it doesn't matter that much if men's income is higher, because we can do it. In Lithuania, 2/3 pool their incomes, 10% keep them separately. In 10%, man decides, and in 17%, the woman of the house decides what happens with funds. And in Estonia, it's a little less than half the families pool, 1/3 keep them separated, 10% man. So these situations are very different within the country. So if you think about the families where they do pool, where they don't pool, so what does it mean for the arguments about gender wage gap? We're talking about arguments that could be accepted by the public and by the policymakers and by men and women. So if you don't have this experience, or if you do have, or what do you have within this experience, it really matters in finding our arguments. What about division of household work? Like, there was the general support that we should have gendered household work division. So now women do find that they contribute more than their fair share, and men feel they contribute less than their fair share. So they are not happy if they're contributing less. I mean, they are happy, but they know that it's less than fair. So they know that they should do more, but they don't. So if we break it down by activities in preparing meals, Icelandic men's share is larger than their perceived fair share. So they actually do more, and they think they should do more. So compared to Estonian and in other tasks, household cleaning, laundry, caring. Lithuanian men and Icelandic women feel to be least invested. So they think they should do more because culture expects to do more. And this is the case for men in Lithuania, but for women in Iceland. So with the gender equality in the country, you still have this feel that you should do more. Grocery shopping, women feel more involved than men across the countries. In small repairs, men feel they are more engaged than women. But in Lithuania, both men and women see that they do less than their fair share. So there is this understanding that we should be coping with everything in our house. We should do more. I may be postponing something. So both men and women feel that they should be more active and more involved in that. And when we applying this approach, looking at the gender division across households, we are able to, of course, look at the different. This is statistics, we can do anything. So now we divided those households in 3 types, where there is mostly shared domestic work household, relatively gender balanced division, then where women were doing most and where men were doing most. So there are 3 types of households. And here Lithuania stands out. Like a big separate, while Estonia and Iceland have a similar general pattern in this accumulation. The households where women are doing most domestic work dominate in all countries. So this is something that, of course, is not surprising by that time anymore. But they're most frequent in Lithuania and much less so in Estonia and Iceland. So, the extent to which this is a common shared pattern, the experience that everyone knows, is different across countries. But it's still overwhelming. Estonia has the most households that share domestic work, and Lithuania the least. So Iceland is the country with most gender equality. Estonia is the country with the highest gender wage gap, but we have the most households that share domestic work. Lithuania has the least gender wage gap, but also the least amount of households where they share domestic work. So that we should ask, what does gender pay gap then mean, and what else is there? And really, are there some things? Now, Iceland has the highest share of households where men are the most responsible for domestic chores, and Lithuania the least, but it's still small numbers. So, nevertheless, so this is the gender equality part of Iceland, right? This is possible as a pattern for men to choose to be that. Women are more likely than men to do the domestic work. In 2/3 of Lithuanian households, women are perceived to do it, but just like slightly more than half of households in Estonia and Lithuania. So even though women mostly are doing more, they're not perceived as doing more. In Lithuania, 1/3 of households appear sharing domestic work. In other countries, it's about 1/3. So really, it's not so different. And this is the men's numbers up here. So 14% in Iceland, 18% in Estonia, 5% in Lithuania. Not that much, but it's an important part. It's quite a sizable number. If you think of these as a group that is normally marginalized, not paid attention to, maybe made jokes of or fun. So in public discussions or in public presentations. So these are the questions, how to work. So there's a little more about how we negotiate and decide, because it should also inform us about the pay negotiations and how we do with those, how we create those decisions. And if half the couples decide jointly what to do over weekend, in Iceland and Lithuania, women are more likely than men to feel decisions are being taken jointly. So this understanding of what it means, that when we report that we do things together and we share those things, but we don't feel we do it, or we feel we do more than we do it. And this may be really something that is behind, the mechanism behind why we can't deal with gender wage gap, because obviously we feel it as a very different thing. There isn't gender wage gap. Well, there is. No, but there are no equal jobs. They don't work in equal jobs. So in that sense, this seems to be different. So in about 17 households in Estonia, 17%, 16% in Iceland, 24% in Lithuania, either one of the spouses takes most of the decisions. Either a man or a woman takes most of the decisions. And this is, in general, there are not so many differences across the country in here, like who takes the decision. But again, since there are no differences across countries in those numbers, we looked at the connection between the decision-making mechanism and satisfaction with one's family life. It appears that deciding jointly over weekend plans correlates with a higher level of satisfaction. So you really actually like that you are paying attention to and you can be a part of that. So across all those three countries, men are most satisfied in the households with more equal contribution to domestic work. Then they are more satisfied, when there is female household domination. And then they're least satisfied when they themselves, when they have to contribute. But it also appears for women. So they are not the happiest when they can contribute or when men contribute only. So women also are most satisfied with the family life in households with shared contribution to domestic chores. Then with those households where men or the other takes care of the chores. And only then where I take care of everything. So sharing makes happy. So this is across the countries. So we see the patterns are different, but the underlying mechanism seems to be similar in terms of what it brings or what it means, not in terms of gender wage gap. So how can I be empowered? So I have my agency, right? So I make my professional career choices, gendered or otherwise. So, but I'm bounded by what is possible, what do I feel is possible. So this comes from the stereotypes that I feel. And in this case, it is important that it comes from the stereotypes about gender, but also stereotypes about occupations, which is what you so nicely brought out in the previous presentation too. And the stereotypes don't come from anywhere else than the prejudices that we have in the societal level about gender or about occupation. So there is a general prejudice and there are stereotypes, and that bounds our agency, so we can't do stuff. Reminder that we will discuss more in the workshop session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tree. And now we have a couple of minutes for questions. So anybody?
How can you explain the fact that sometimes women don't support women? I face that problem now when I'm preparing 2 events for women in Russia, and I'm asking women for some types of support, for example, to come with a speech, to invite other women to the women's conference. We don't do actions like women are great, let's talk about that. It's scientific events. And one event is very important for the St. Petersburg. It's an international event, 25th conference, East and West meet in St. Petersburg. And it's very shocking for me that women don't share our values, our women's values. They don't want to support, they don't want to support other women. How can you explain that?
There is diversity of views in each group. Like in every group, there is diversity of views. So we can have, as one explanation, obviously, that people don't feel the same way about things that are, that matter in society. Then I would say another thing is that a normal woman would look like that. They don't go on protests, they don't fight, they don't argue. They don't do that. So if somebody do that, we can't cope with it. And then the other thing is that we do actually support each other, but in other ways. We don't support them in those matters. So it's very important to figure out what is this small thing that we all do agree on. Where do we support each other? So diversity. What is normal to do as a woman? Like you can have this glaze that says that you're not happy, but that's the most that you can do, right?
But men support men much better. That's the point. They also very different, men are different, but they support each other. We don't.
That's what we think.
No.
There's less of us there to be able to support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Very interesting. Now, before lunch, we still have one keynote speaker. It's Finnish PhD researcher Inkeri Tankua from Sekli Research Project in Hanken School of Economics. Please welcome PhD researcher Tankua.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. It's been a long morning, so now if you want to stretch a bit before I start, you can do it now, and even keep stretching a bit while I begin. So our presentation is loosely connected to the ESF project, a project funded by European Social Fund that we have here in Finland. And its topic was occupational and educational gender segregation and how to mitigate it. And so this is about Finnish context, but of course there are many similarities in different countries. And I'm providing some explanations why this happens. Why is there so much gender segregation both in education and at work? And then I have a presentation as well, so can you find it from somewhere? Okay, thank you. Yes. So the content of my presentation is first I provide a little bit about the context. Yes. So Finland, what is the image of Finland as both gender equal and gender segregated? Then I provide some explanations of why this happens, this segregation, and then some ideas for change. Yes, so like we have learned, Finland gets very good points in this gender equality indexes, both the European one and the global one. So that's why we say that Finland is a very gender equal country. Of course, it doesn't get 100 points, so you see it's not really, even based on these indexes, it's not actually gender equal, it's just doing relatively well in comparison to other countries. Then Finland is also very gender segregated, and according to this report that I'm quoting here, it's the most gender segregated country in Europe. And according to this report, there are only 2% of employees who are working in those sectors where there are at least 40% of men and women. So only 2%, that's quite shocking, I would say. And we have primary schools where we don't divide kids, we have both boys and girls in the same schools. But then when we become adults, we actually divide ourselves very much. Men very men and women very much. So there's also another stereotype of Finland that particularly Finns like to push forward, and that is the stereotype of Finland as a very technically advanced country. And particularly at the time when Nokia was even stronger than today, this was like pushed forward a lot, but it still continues to be an important thing for us fits. But unfortunately, this doesn't match very well with the stereotype of gender equality, because when we talk about these techno heroes that are designing the future, designing the country, we mostly talk about men, and with very stereotypical terms as well. Then also, if you look at the export industries, it's mostly like technology makes up 60%, then we have chemical industry 20%, 20% of some others. So it's very much like male-dominated industries that are there exporting products. Then I have some statistics, educational statistics from Finland. And just like we have talked, here you can see that we have in technology very, very male-dominated field. This is all the degrees of both in vocational school and universities. And then on the other side, we have health and welfare, very female-dominated sector. But then, if you look at what we have in the center, like, for example, business is supposed to be equal or a bit like female-dominated. But if you really look at who goes to business schools and what kind of majors they choose, we find out that, okay, it's over 90% of men studying finance, and then over 80% of women study marketing. They have other majors too. But so, in fact, even those which we have in the center of the figure, they're really not that equal if you go into details and look at what occupations they really have, what majors they have, or what kind of work they do. So it's actually even worse than what this picture shows. And I have a more detailed figure. This is from vocational education, because that is what I researched in the project. But I'm still showing this because this is very illustrative as well. I have marked with deep orange those majors where you have more than 95% of either men or women, and it's mostly deep orange. And these are 12 biggest subjects, like all of them have more than 1,000 study places in Finland. So this is the biggest subjects, and it's very segregated. But then with light orange, I've marked those where you have more than 85% of either sex. And then we only have two where there are two subsects where you have like more equal numbers. So the more detailed statistics you get, the worse it looks like. Then, why is this so? Like, why does gender have such a huge impact on educational choices that we make? We often say that gender shouldn't matter or that it doesn't matter, but we've seen the statistics, it matters, so why? And on individual level, one of the reasons is that men and women are familiar with different occupations and study subjects. And when you're not familiar with something, you might not even consider it because you don't know about it. Or if you do, then you might only consider a stereotype of the occupation. And then we get to the second point, gender stereotypes and stereotypes of different occupations influence choices. Then, of course, some also anticipate discrimination or discrimination that they think is in workplaces, and some of it is real, and some of it is maybe not what they think, or they just think that I might not fit in. And then, of course, there are many other factors that limit educational choices, if you can even call them choices, and they have some gender elements as well. Okay, so why are women and men familiar with different occupations and different study subjects? First, you get information from parents, relatives, other adults, and not only information on what they do, but also their ideas of to whom this work is suitable. So, for example, maybe your mother is a physiotherapist, and then you ask like, I would like to become a physiotherapist too, but the mother says, well, in a way it's nice occupation, but because you are a man, maybe you need to consider that you have to make money for your future family, and maybe you need to consider something else, blah, blah, blah. And this attitude is also transferred, not only that you get to know these occupations. And this is also one reason, of course, why parents' occupations are often inherited, because you need to consider them. You get information on them, but also your friends and relatives are asking, like, are you going to be a lawyer like your father, or are you going to be a teacher like your mother? And you have to consider them. You might not choose them, but they become they're on your list of occupations that you consider. And friends, they are often same-sex, particularly in primary school, and also in upper secondary school. Hobbies, they are very gendered, much more gendered than what the curriculum in primary school. And they might be influential because during your hobbies you get those experiences that this is something that I'm really good at and very interested in. And then if you think about what is the thing that I'm very interested in, hobbies matter a lot. And the curriculum that you had in primary school might matter less. Then there are very few intensive periods in a primary school or general upper secondary school. So often no support in finding those places, so maybe you just go to the same workplace as your mother and father, so you don't learn anything new. Or I mean, of course you learn new things there as well, but you don't learn about new occupations that you wouldn't otherwise consider. And then in Finland, of course, we have army for young men. And when you don't have much other work experiences, this is like compulsory internship that you have to make. And often when you are very young, so you don't have other experiences, so this matters a lot. It might be the first experience you get from working life. And of course, then it comes one of the occupations that you consider because you're familiar with it. It already looks like much more surprising why there is gender segregation. Then the stereotypes. I have the right picture there. Like Trine was also pointing out in her presentation, there are stereotypes of different occupations. Like, for example, there is a stereotype of engineering that it's very technical, it's very machine focused, it's nerdy people doing it, and this is a horrible stereotype, it's not true. Like, of course, engineering is mostly teamwork, you need social skills, and you might need to think of the end users as well. So it's not something that is true, but it is still something that very much influences us when we think about this occupation, particularly if we are not familiar with it. And then gender stereotypes, these are not true, of course, in a sense that not all the women are kind, caring, friendly, and so on. Actually, like all the people have like both masculine and feminine characteristics if you think about an individual. But and of course, not every individual feels like either a woman or a man. There are also non-binary gender people. But then gender stereotypes are true in a sense that we know these, and these are very much known across different cultures. And then they may influence your choices, unfortunately. Like, for example, you might be thinking that, okay, I was good with maths in school, and I'm a woman, and I'm also very social, and social skills are very much my strength, so maybe not go to engineering after all, because I want to utilize this great strength of social skills as well. And then you choose something that you consider maybe a bit less technical or something like that. So although they are stereotypes, they do influence. Then, of course, you also might think that there are gender inequalities at work. And can I get a job after graduation? If you don't see role models, if you don't see people like you in the occupation, you might start doubting. And what about the career? Is there a bias in career development? Do I really need to work harder? And what about, can I reconcile work and family life if you want children, for example? And then also, even if there is no discrimination, do I feel like I can fit in? Like if you don't see people like you in the profession, like you might doubt whether you can fit in. And of course, if you are the only man or woman, it's maybe harder to feel like you fit in. And then you might also think if there is sexual harassment or bullying in these workplaces. So this, of course, affects also the choices before you go there. Then when you experience this, then again, it affects and you might change careers. And then there are many other factors that limit your choices as well. Primary school grades, whether you can get in to a certain school or not. Geographical location, whether you have certain educational institutions in the town that you live, or are you ready to move somewhere? And then, for example, in the capital area, you have to have really good grades if you want to go from primary school to general upper secondary school directly at the age of 16. You have to have really good grades. So, for example, when I was doing interviews, I learned that there were these women who had migrated to Finland maybe at the age of 12 or when they were teenagers, and then that affected their primary school grades. So at the age of 16, they didn't have that good grades because they had also learned Finnish during the years they had been here, and then they couldn't get into upper secondary school in the capital area because you need really good grades. If you are living in another parts of Finland, it's usually more easier to get into general upper secondary school. So they basically had to go to vocational education at that point. Of course, after you've been in vocational education, you can then again continue in general upper secondary school, but I think you really have to have confidence to know that you are good despite you didn't get in. Besides, it takes, of course, more time for you. So all these together impact as well. So on organizational level, in primary schools, you don't get much information. You don't get much information on working life in general because it's a general education. Then, of course, we have talked a bit of early childhood education and the same in primary school as well, like if it is gender sensitive and what kind of pictures of different professions we portray when they are discussed, and whether pupils are divided to girls and boys. They used to divide, for example, in handicrafts, but it's now we have only one subset of handicrafts in Finland, so that has changed, so I'm not going into detail with that. Then secondary education, higher education, again, locating marketing entrance, who is attracted to apply, methods of teaching, then positive feedback, very important for particularly those who are in minority. And the atmosphere in the schools, of course, as well. And then particularly vocational schools and well, with universities too, actually, the culture of industries also influences the educational institutes and their atmosphere. It's good if teachers are very well aware of what is going on in the industry, but then, of course, some of the biases and views can come into school as well. And then work organizations, many practices that might privilege others and then discriminate others in recruitment, career development, and atmosphere harassment, and whether it's family friendly or not. Then on the level of society, in Finland, welfare society is greatly contributing to gender equality in a good way. And there is high women's employment rate if you compare to other European countries, for example. But then, however, at the same time, the same welfare society also employs women in very low-paid care jobs, or some of them are low-paid, not all of them. And equal pay for work of equal value is not realized because many women work in the public sector, and they don't have as much power to negotiate of their salaries as the export industries. And many of the export industries are in male-dominated sectors, so there's this power imbalance in negotiations. And then, of course, care responsibilities are not evenly shared, neither at work and also in families. Then let's move on to ideas for change. What could we do then? And the first one is for you as an individual. If you think about your occupation, if you would be in that situation now, get to know those professions that you are not familiar with. Spend some time with that. Think beyond your current strengths. Think what you could learn and what kind of work environment could you like. Very often we make decisions based on this. When we are young, we make decisions based on school subjects, but think about what is the work exactly, and not only what was it like in school to study physics, for example. Then find information and employment possibilities in terms of employment, so that you are aware. Then when you discuss with someone, a friend, for example, who is thinking where they should be going, tell about your profession and tell how much you are paid and what are the pros and cons in your work, so that they get familiar with your work. And guide them to talk with others too, and encourage getting to know professions they are not familiar with. And also don't assume that your friends have certain skills or abilities based on their gender. Then on the educational institutions, I think primary schools and general upper secondary schools should provide more information on working life. And one of the things where this could be done is this phenomenon-based learning. It's discussed now a lot in Finland and it's coming here, and there are many critics as well. But the good thing would be that this could help in knowing different occupations much better than we now learn in primary school. Then cooperation with work organizations, with parents who can tell about their occupations, and then support from school for finding different internship places, so that it's not only on your responsibility to contact companies. Then the second point comes very much from my thinking of what business schools should be doing. Because when you talk about companies and you talk about different industries, it would be very important to provide examples of both male-dominated and female-dominated sectors. So maybe you are researching technology companies yourself, but it would be great if you can also provide other examples, because then it inspires more your students, or more diversified your students. And then, of course, you also make students to think what possibilities there are. It's no wonder why we don't have companies like H&M and IKEA in Finland. Then, of course, it's not only teachers, but guest lecturers and visitors to workplaces that can provide role models. And for school management, to think about how to recruit students and also how to market your school. And then also consider why do people drop out, and is there a gender element there, and how could we support better, for example, those who are in minority. Gender equality and diversity plans, very important. And gender sensitive educational materials and teaching, of course. Then for work organizations, work organizations could also change the stereotypical attitudes or the images that we have of certain professions. So to consider what are the images and how are they gendered, and could the organization do something to nuance these and just provide materials of what kind of profession is this really. And then what kind of products are we doing? Then also think beyond, like, is our product or service very gendered, and could that be changed? You might get new ideas of what to do also. Then of course improve gender equality in practices and at working places, in recruitment, career development, in equal pay, creating family-friendly organization, and then also informing that is what we have done. And then some ideas for change for the level of society or for politicians. In Finland, definitely think beyond these technology startups and finance also other startups and other companies and technology. Although this might have been strength in the past, other things could be strength as well. And then do not repeat these gender stereotypical images of technology, because reality is more complex. And then, of course, continue to making political decisions which encourage this equal share of care responsibilities, both at home and at work. And one of the things that helps in this is, of course, early childhood education, affordable one. Regulate terms of employment, negotiate for equal pay. We've given an example that it's not very easy always, but it's still something we need to continue doing. And gender equality in all politics, but educational politics particularly, and then support gender equality and diversity planning in educational institutions and workplaces.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we need now to go to lunch so that we can have lunch before the open public will come. So Inge will be on the lunch also, so you can ask questions and discuss it there. Thank you.